Hello, world history students. This is Mrs. Politsky, and I have your notes for the start of the Far East Unit. And we're going to talk a little bit about China, Japan, and the Koreas as we're kind of traveling through here. As we go along, make sure you are jotting down the information that you need, but always make sure that you're listening because you never know what little tidbits I might have to add. All right, so we're going to start with Chapter 6, Section 1, Schools of Thought in Ancient China. And we're going to talk a little bit about the Han Dynasty. It restored unity and strength in China's government by lowering taxes. It also created a large bureaucracy. A bureaucracy is basically like a highly organized structure like government or the Catholic Church or such. It also restored stability. Then it implemented something known as the civil service exam. This was a test that anyone who wanted the job within the Chinese government or that bureaucracy would have to take. And it would prove whether or not they were well qualified or not. Today, even our government has a civil service exam, which if you would like to work for, let's say, the Postal Service, or if you're working in places like Washington, D.C., and you want to work as an accountant or secretary or whatnot for the U.S. government, you would take this exam to prove whether or not you were qualified. During the Han era, and maybe even a little bit before, there was always this desire to trade one of China's most coveted products, and that is silk. And the question is, how did the Chinese make silk? Silk making was actually a coveted secret. And matter of fact, the Chinese were really pretty good at keeping this secret kind of under wraps for a long period of time. But for the most part, they were raising silkworms. And as a result, they were able to gather the cocoon, and so they would unwind the thread from the worm cocoon. Eventually, they would dye the threads, and eventually those threads would be woven into a garment. To promote order and a person's proper role in society. This led to the foundations of what is known as Confucian philosophy. Just so you understand, Confucianism sometimes is kind of referred to as a religion, and it's really more of a philosophical kind of point of view. Part of it being the fact that there are no deities within Confucianism. And so this whole idea that, it's a philosophy probably is a better fit. But according to Confucius, the man who came up with Confucianism, the relationship with families, such as one between a father and a son, were really smaller reflections of the relationship within family or society. And so in this kind of relationship, the son would always respect his father. And not only that, but if you had a younger brother and an older brother, it was right for the younger brother to give more respect to his older brother. Anyway, these were all basis of how we're going to relate with one another. And thus, if you can understand the relationship between father and son, then you would understand the relationship between ruler and subject. The teachings of Confucius would eventually provide the basis for China's civil service exam. So, the three general responsibilities of each member of a Han family were to honor their dead ancestors. Ancestor worship is kind of a big deal within ancient China. Matter of fact, they would use different items to kind of foretell oracles and such, but it was all about making sure that you would honor those deceased relatives. Because you're always trying to honor them, the worst thing you could do is to bring dishonor to your family. And so you never wanted to do something that was going to make people think less of the people that you came from. And finally, you always have to obey those above one in their family hierarchy. So as a younger sibling, I would have to respect my older sibling. And needless to say, sometimes that's not always easy to do, but it does obviously lend itself to this type of culture. So, since we're talking about Confucian values, we're going to kind of go through and take a look at a few scenarios. And what you've kind of got to determine is what is Confucian and what is non Confucian. Anyway, if you live with your husband's village family, and you work in the fields and you do your housework and you always do your husband and mother in law's bidding, that is basically part of the Confucian values. Your reading list is made up of popular novels, travel narratives, and books on technology. This would most certainly be non Confucianism. Anything that is going to take you away from what is the normal structure, taking you away from your homeland. Certainly, that wouldn't necessarily be Confucian. You don't want to marry the man that your rural parents have chosen for you. You want to run off to the city and become an entertainer or a weaver in a textile manufacturing plant. Certainly, again, that's not Confucian. You've gained great wealth from trading and you deal fairly and you don't display your wealth. Your son spends his time studying to pass the civil service exam. That's definitely Confucian. Oppressed by ever rising taxes, you abandon your life as a peasant farmer and you move to the city to become a water carrier. That would be non Confucian. And number 6, you spent your early and mature adulthood studying the classics, which give you a complete guide on how to behave, think, and live. That is most certainly Confucian. And number 7, you farm the land that your family has farmed for many generations, and you care for your aging parents and ever increasing family. That again is Confucian. And finally, you live in a seaport where you have gained great wealth from trade. You enjoy a luxurious lifestyle. Your contact with many non-Chinese traders that you deal with has probably made you non-Confucian. All right. Number 5, Confucius's low opinion of women affected the role of women in the Han household because women were not educated. They were also under the control of their fathers. And if their father would pass away, then obviously their husband or eventually their sons, possibly their brother. In this, in a circumstance where maybe you have a young female who is unmarried, certainly this put a lot of strain on women during this period of time. All right. There are many achievements that can be attributed to this period of time of the Han Dynasty in the arts and sciences and technology. I just want to kind of go through some of these. We had the building of roads. When you think about the Silk Road that would go through parts of China and eventually connect China to Europe, canals that were dug primarily by hand, the making of salt, the use of iron for making just about everything you could think about, the use of alcohol, the civil service system, education, welfare to help those who were in need, the tenaciousness of our warriors, the making of an iron plow, paper making, this whole idea of seismographs, helping the Chinese measure and maybe even somewhat predict when there would be an earthquake. The compass to help you understand your directions. Okay, it sounds crazy, but the wheelbarrow, this whole idea of using a wheel to move a large load was unheard of until the Chinese. And probably the one thing that they're probably most noted for, gunpowder, not just for fireworks. Thank you very much.